Hey, everybody, this is Greg Zahn.
This is Anthony Telford.
You're listening to The Walk-Off with Scott Belford and Adam Mack.
Excited to be joined right now by the president of Prairie Sticks, a baseball bat manufacturer out of central Alberta, Red Deer to be specific, Jared Greenberg. Welcome to The Walk-Off. Thanks for joining us, man.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Loving your toque there, buddy. That's some old school Expo stuff. Yeah.
Born in Montreal. I can't wait for the day they come back and I'll fly out there and be there for the first game. So.
Oh, yeah. Adam has a real plan here for when Rogers Center's torn down and rebuilding. He needs Montreal. This is his plan, all right? So Montreal, build the stadium that they need, move the Jays there for 2 years while they rebuild their stadium. Then they're all ready to go, hot for a new MLB team, and then you slide the Rays right in there.
That sounds like a pretty good plan. I'd be there for yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Again, Jared, thank you so much for joining us, my man. Prairie Sticks, 17 years now, 18 years?
Yeah, 17, I guess, going on 18 here in a few months, yeah.
That's very cool. So when did you move to Alberta?
We moved out here when I was 5.
Oh, so you're a seasoned vet out here.
Yeah, it's home for sure.
Okay, awesome. Now, honestly, I have a pile of questions here for you, so let's start kind of with the beginning here. If you could give us a little bit of a rundown on Prairie Sticks and how running a baseball bat manufacturer out of central Alberta kind of became a reality for you.
It was back in, I guess, 2002. Kind of came up with the idea. The senior level in Baseball Canada switched to wood bats at that time. I was playing on a senior baseball team here in Red Deer, and we just needed to find a manufacturer for some bats as we were making that transition. And we ordered some bats up in, I think it was April or May for the season, and we ended up getting them in September, which wasn't ideal, obviously. So in that off season, I guess it became out of necessity, like, what can I do so that this problem doesn't happen again? And that's where I came up with the idea to, manufacture our own bats. I had zero experience in woodworking, as evidenced by the first few off the lathe. Literally went to Canadian Tire, bought the 4 model that was on display, and I think under $100, and bought some tools. Came away with a few stitches from wood flying off, sharp corners, and just kind of started there. And almost 2 decades later, I'm not gonna lie, doing this in central Alberta probably isn't the best spot, but we make it work.
Well, it's not your traditional baseball market, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it was my 9-year-old son actually on the way home yesterday. He's like, "You figure you would make hockey sticks?" He says to me. "It's a lot easier to do hockey sticks than baseball bats." I mean, we've been asked that question so many times over the course of the years. Did you make hockey sticks as well? And I mean, I probably should, but totally different process. Obviously, the sports are a lot different in popularity here, but this is where I guess we lived and where I decided to do it from, and we get awesome support from Western Canada and, even across the country. So I think we've created our own little market. I think with the pandemic, people have decided to shop more local and support small business. And, even without a, more of a modified 2020 season, definitely seen the support full on. Like, our doors are still open. We had, a successful Black Friday here, and it's, pretty optimistic going into the 2021 season. So, yeah.
Well, that's great to hear that, man. This pandemic's been a thorn in everybody's side, but you're kind of keeping your head above water then. People are still ordering bats.
Yeah, no. Well, we used to have a shop in the Comey. We were out there for about 3 years, which is just a little bit north of Red Deer, about a half hour. And then, I think it was about the middle of May, so about 3 months after, everything got shut down, we were forced to move. And luckily I had some shop space on the acreage that we own, and we were able to slide right back in there. I don't know what we would have done if we were, forced to find another place to rent, but, it's rent free. It's a lot smaller. It's cozy, but it allowed us to transition pretty quickly. So I guess that was our pivot. So it's provided some manufacturing challenges just being in such a small space, but we were able to keep going. I think we were shut down for 3 days, so I don't even know if anyone has actually noticed. We were, besides where they come pick up the bats from, that we have moved. But that was our way of being able to stay open and keep persevering through, an interesting season. And I think, people at the end of the day, I know they want to play sports. It's important for parents for their kids to get out and play and, to be outside and, the mental aspect and the physical aspect. So I truly believe that when next spring rolls around and, snow starts melting, that people are just, be chomping at the bit to play baseball. And I think we're just going to be ramping up for a successful 2021 season. That's the plan anyways. And based on what we've seen here in the last few months, even this season, I think we're set up for it pretty good.
Well, I think it's great to see something like Prairie Sticks in Alberta. I mean, it's one thing that we kind of talk about on this podcast quite regularly with our guests and stuff like that, is that the game of baseball has grown substantially in this province over the last decade or two. I'm sure you've seen that on your end as well. And I know you kind of touched on the fact that you didn't really have any experience with manufacturing bats in the past. And it always kind of makes me think of The Natural and Wonder Boy, right? Did you ever handcraft like one sole bat for yourself type of thing, like with your hands? Or
I mean, everything at the start, back in the early 2000s was done by hand. Now it's done by, essentially a program on a CNC lathe where we just essentially just push a button and let a computer do all the work. So it's come a long ways in that regard. But yeah, everything at the beginning was done by hand. It was, like I said, looking back on it, you're kind of everyone has to start somewhere, but the product now compared to back then is just not even on the same, planet.
Well, I know on your website it says it's a 36-step process, and obviously we don't need all 36 steps here, but what does it look like to go from a lathe, chunk of wood, come out a bat? What's kind of the process that you would be following there?
So we get all of our wood from a supplier out east in Quebec. So everything is sourced from Canada. And I think that's, it's been an important thing to, keep everything in this economy as a Canadian manufacturer, to be able to, have suppliers in Canada and support those people. So we get all the wood in a skid or two skids, 700-800 pieces at a time. We go through and weigh all the wood. So that basically allows us to know the density of the wood, and we can match up a profile and a length with a certain density. And from there, it goes on the lathe. We choose the profile that the customer orders. The lathe cuts it, and it goes right into a staining process. After the staining process, it gets a couple of coats of clear, and with the logos applied, and it goes in for engraving on the laser engraver. So that's where we put the player's name or team name,
right,
and gets packaged, bagged up, and boxed, and courier comes to pick it up, and a few days later arrives on the person's doorstep or at their house.
Yeah, and it's funny because you bring that up a little bit when it comes to ball players. A custom bat, even in the amateur circuit, is like a prized possession, right? Are there some customized bats that you've made that kind of stand out over the years?
Yeah, so we had our Major League Baseball certification for 5 seasons. I think this would be the second season that we did not. So just trying to count backwards here. About 2013 to 18, we had our Major League license. So we worked with, probably 50 Major League Baseball players. So there's definitely some interesting models that those guys, tinker and tweak with and adjust over time. That group of players would be the most particular,
right? Of course,
subset of players out there, but also they're this, essentially the smallest percentage of guys too. For the amateur player, not really. We'll suggest different models. There's a little bit of tinkering, but it's not too much. I don't think the players at the amateur level are quite at that level yet to really know. But there are definitely some different model types that are just not suitable for certain players, depending on strength and size of player for sure. So yeah, we try and, make recommendations based on, 17 years of experience of doing it day in, day out. Just kind of like when you go to an accountant, you rely on them for their expertise and, doing everything correctly, where I hope that people, rely on us, doing it for 2 decades, that, we have an idea of what we're doing, right?
What you're doing. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And it's funny. Prairie Sticks itself, the name, I absolutely love it. Just such a great imagery of Alberta and baseball in general. And I think my favorite Prairie Sticks story, and it's funny because Adam sent this to me yesterday, and it kind of triggered a memory of mine. I remember seeing you guys on Sportsnet like 10, 11 years ago. Now, I'm not going to spoil the story here for the listener. I'll let you tell it. But if you could kind of give the rundown on the John Odom trade from the Calgary Vipers to the Laredo Broncos.
Yeah, I think we were doing actually a tour through I think it was the Golden League at that time was the name of the league. And I think we were in the middle of somewhere in North Dakota when the story broke, and we were probably on Blackberries and had, 2G type service, on some interstate. And that's when the story broke, where there's a trade for, I think it was 10 Prairie Sticks for a player. It was the Calgary Vipers that, pulled off this trade. I think it was just more of a joke than anything, but
yeah.
At that time, minor league baseball or more independent baseball was picking up some steam, and off field or, outside at least the white line promotions were, a big deal. And that was part of the attraction to get people in the stands, and, how they created some interest. And I think it just kind of took on a life of its own. And the next thing you know, we were in front of cameras and waking up early to do like all these like Canada AM TV shows. And,
because it's your bats being traded for a player.
it was nothing that it was even on the radar whatsoever. And it just kind of, it was, I guess, our own version of going viral without even thinking, of what even viral was at that time, and zero intention. And I don't think, I'm not sure how we could, what the best way to capitalize on that was. I don't think we ever did, but it was fun. Like, we definitely, you could see if we went on like the website statistics, like there was a lot more people at least visiting. I'm not sure about buying, but checking out who we were and what we were about. And it was definitely an interesting time. It was kind of a little bit of celebrity type status for a week or so anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of cool to be getting calls from Sportsnet and ESPN and stuff. That's crazy.
And I think the biggest one that I think we did that kind of allowed us to realize, it was the Associated Press. Actually, I remember them asking for an interview, and I think we were on Canada AM one morning, and I think just like anything, it still lives on the internet if you go digging deep enough. It's still out there. So every once in a while I'll do a Google search and it'll pop up, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember. What year was that in? 2010?
2009.
9? Okay. Yeah. So it's a time. It's been a while since that's happened. So.
So your official position on your website is Chief Engineer of Line Drives. I love that. And I know maple tends to be the wood that players and teams are looking for when purchasing bats. What are the types of woods that Prairie Sticks is using, and why is maple preferred?
So we inventory 3 types of wood. So maple, birch, and ash. Maple would be the most popular out there, and it's the hardest wood that bats are made out of it, on a regular basis. And then birch is picking up some popularity. It's not quite as hard as the ash, but it's more flexible, so more forgiving, like I like to tell people. I recommend it a lot to that 12, 13-year-old player who's making the transition from metal bats to wood bats, just because if you do hit it, there's a little bit more flex to it. It may, there's less of a chance it's going to break on that first swing, right? And cause tears and that first bat breaking experience. Ash was that type of wood from the 1800s, late 1800s, that Louisville sluggers started churning. I think it was just in abundance. It had the right density to make wood bats. It still is an option, but it's becoming less and less popular. There is an insect infestation in that kind of northeast U.S.
So it's availability, or is it that ash just breaks
more? No, it's not that it breaks more. It's more availability, and the price has gone up on it. So it's no less expensive than maple anymore. So it's the supply's harder to get. There's less demand. We still do inventory it. It is an option. People do choose it occasionally, but it's a open pored wood. So with a lot of use, the grains will start to actually separate. And so the bat could be rendered useless even before it breaks. So it's just not a great option for amateur players where the birch and the maple are closed grain woods. So with a lot of repeated use, it won't separate and it'll stay together intact. So yeah, it's a quick rundown of the three types.
So I'm curious then, what are the like rules and regulations for manufacturing a bat? Are there specs and stuff that you kind of have to follow to?
Yeah, the official rules of baseball state that the bat can has to be less. I think it's 42 inches. I mean, the billets that we get are 37, so that's impossible.
Right.
I think the biggest bats we make for a player are 35, and those are few and far between. I would say the vast majority of bats we make are that 31 to 32 inch range. That teenager, even some adults are more 32, but Major League Baseball would have the most stringent guidelines as far as wood density, barrel and handle diameters, and things like that. If you're going to go, Baseball Canada or Baseball Alberta rules and regulations for bats, you'll see mostly the regulations fall under the metal bat category. We make solid one-piece wood bats, and there's essentially, as long as they're solid one-piece bats, they don't have any rules tied to them.
Right. So you'd have to work to not make a bat that would be acceptable.
You'd have to probably laminate, a bunch of pieces of wood together, make a bat out of it, and then all of a sudden it's not a solid, piece of wood, right? And then that may, get you down another path of having to get, a bat approved or something like that. So really, amateur baseball in Canada, there's so few rules and regulations that basically, you order a bat and it would fit or fall underneath, category of not needing to be approved, for lack of a better term now.
Right. I know we put out there on our Instagram for all the listeners out there to any questions they may have. And one thing that and I call them nerds, I mean that with love, but a lot of the baseball nerds kept bringing up the grain of the bat. What does that have to do with hitting? And is there a certain way you want to use and connect with the,
so I like to equate it, person who does karate, chopping a piece of wood, right? They're going to not chop against the grain, but with the grain, because it's not as strong.
Right.
So what we do is we put, there's two sides of the grain. There's the face grain, which you don't see all those straight lines. And then there's the edge grain, which those are where you can see the lines of the grain. So we put on maple and birch the logos on that edge grain side. So 9 degrees out of what your grandfather may told you that's normal. And the reason for that is Major League Baseball did a bunch of studies around broken maple bats in that late 2007 to 2009. And what they concluded was that logo orientation was not necessarily the strongest, but it was the way to, when bats break, it caused the least amount of two-piece failure. So bat heads, flying or helicoptering across the infield. So when a bat breaks with that logo orientation on that edge grain, it'll mostly just rupture and stay together. Ash will go on the face grain just because of the structure of the wood. So when players are using their bats, it's most of the time when we get broken bat pictures saying, "Hey, my bat broke too soon," the grain the logo orientation will always be 90 degrees out. So that's pretty much the number one factor is players don't pay attention. Like, we put the logo on a specific part of the bat for a specific reason. And players, as they're mostly during batting practice or even during that bat, they'll just rotate the bat without any sort of knowledge of where the grain is. And without fail, we'll always see the logo in the wrong spot when the bat broke.
Right.
So it is important for sure. The logo faces up and down at contact, no matter what bat you're using. So maple and birch will be on that edge grain side of the bat. Ash will be on the face grain. And there's a specific reason why the logos are where they are.
How long do Prairie Sticks bats normally last?
We do offer a warranty, but we say, we say either on about 3 feet from the first pitch or about 10 feet from when you buy them. I mean, We've
I
had
get it,
people,
yeah.
they come back a couple years later, and you're like, well, like, did they go buy something else between that? And they're like, no, the bat's just broke now, like 2 years later. And sometimes, we get complaints on, hey, my bat broke on the first at bat. I mean,
Yeah.
when we get the billets, we're looking for the straightest possible grain, put it in the handle. We're doing everything we can to send you out the best bat possible. It is a piece of wood.
Yeah.
If we can, guarantee Mother Nature, and ensure Mother Nature doesn't cause a hurricane or a tornado, or it's impossible to really say. There's so many things in that bat or in a pitch that is out of our control. You could get fooled by a changeup or a breaking ball and just be out front and the bat breaks. I mean, I just cannot control that, as a bat manufacturer. Now, if, a person's like tapping home plate and the bat, breaks in two, okay, well, now that's a different story. But, if you get jammed and sawed off, well, I can't.
That's on you. Yeah.
Yeah, I can help it. Yeah. And if I'm a pitcher, and I see a brand new shiny bat come up there, I mean, what am I trying to do as a pitcher too, right? So, I think we had a friend who his son pitched in the Rays organization, and they actually charted broken bats was one of their metrics that they would chart. So
that sounds so like something the Rays would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's actually a thing. Like, they want their pitchers to break bats. And as a bat manufacturer, you're always trying to find that balance. Like, you don't want it to happen too soon, but you don't want it to happen too long either, right? So
that's funny. As a bat manufacturer, you also want the pitchers breaking bats. Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna lie. But there's that happy medium. Like, I obviously don't enjoy feeling those calls or emails with, an unhappy person on the other end. But, like, there's just so much that's out of our control. Like, I think during the manufacturing process, we're controlling literally as much as we possibly can with a natural resource. And then once the player gets the bat in their hands, they have, a few factors on their end that they can, do to make the bat last longer. And, we send out emails, like educational emails after their order. As their order is being delivered, they'll get educational emails saying, this is your logo orientation. This is what we do to make the bat last as long as possible. This is what you can do, storage and things like that. During the off season. So we're trying to educate the person,
right,
the player, as much as possible. Because we don't want the bat. We want the bat to last in the customer's mind as long as it should. I mean, I can't give you, exact amount of time, but, we're doing everything we can to, to educate and put the best product out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know I find with composite bats, when you're playing slow pitch,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a few days to kind of break in the bat.
Yeah.
Is it similar with Prairie Sticks, or does it have max pop right out of the gate?
Pick it up and go. I've heard that with these slow pitch bats, that there's a break-in period and you're supposed to like turn the barrel or something like that. I mean, turn the barrel with wood bats is a recipe for disaster. Number one, like,
yeah, you did just bring that up. That's true.
Yeah. So like with birch bats, I haven't read any studies on it, but what you can see is that the grain with a bunch of use will start to compress and they'll become a washboard effect. So what people have said is that with that grain compression and that washboard effect, you can kind of see it, the bat will get harder with use. With that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with going into, a game type scenario with a fresh birch bat. Like, it's not going to underperform for you until you take, let's say, 100 swings with it, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's just with wood bats, is just pick it up and get in there and get some pine tar on it and go up to hit.
Start swinging.
That's right. Yep.
Awesome. I'm curious as to who your clientele is. Like, are you providing bats for colleges, and if you are providing it for any major leaguers, we'd love names.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at one point we, like I was saying, we had our Major League Baseball certification. It's just such a tough.
Let's back that up a second. What does that entail? The Major League certification. Do you need that to be sending bats to the majors? You do, obviously. Yeah.
Even the minors. Yeah. So it entails, coughing up about $15,000 US for a licensing fee.
Of course. Okay.
I had to spend 2 wintry days in Madison, Wisconsin under, I think it was, what's it called? The U.S. Forestry Laboratory, doing bat training. Like, they went anywhere from like I was saying, this is why we put logos on this side to like different species of woods. I mean, we had wood doctors, conducting this 2-day wood bat training seminar in the middle of Wisconsin. And I think it was in December. It was, not the time to go to Wisconsin. Yeah. So that was part of the process. And then you would go to the winter meetings and try and, obviously drum up business there. And then you would go to Florida and Arizona a couple times a year. You do one round through the minor leagues and then one round through the big league camps. So I'd spend essentially the whole month of March down in Florida, Arizona, waking up at 5 a.m. because that's when guys show up in spring training, getting to the ballparks and, trying to sell some bats. And then, yeah, so, through those, like, I think our two biggest clients at that point were the Blue Jays and the Yankees. And
awesome.
Yeah, so they would outfit essentially their whole minor league system with the bats. But there just wasn't enough. By the time you outlaid all those expenses, there just wasn't enough. You were just working your tail off for maybe to make a few $1,000s. Like, it was just a lot of work for
not much progress. I get it.
And they had the big companies, like the 3 or 4 big companies with a firm grip on all the major league clients, where the margins are better and obviously exposure on TV is better. But there's only 30 teams. There's 15 position players, only 450 players at that level in the world.
Yeah.
So it's just hard to gain any share of that market. Just looking back on it, it wasn't, you were working so hard for, just a small piece of the pie where, there's a much bigger amateur market to serve, right? Where, you could still provide them those products and services. So in 2018, it was just like, all right, this is just not working. Like the cool factor kind of wore off of, you did that for a few years. You got to like meet a bunch of guys, I think who would be the most popular person that we made bats for? Like a Machado.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There's like Russell Martin, Justin Smoke. We're just trying to think of some of the guys.
That's very cool, man.
Yeah. So, there was like, Elvis Andrews. He's kind of regressed a little bit, but, there's some big names that we turned bats for over that amount of time. Like I was saying, we did like the Jays minor league system, the Yankees minor league system. I think it was the Rays were on there, Rockies. There's probably about 12 organizations, the Angels, that over time in building relationships that we were able to sell bats to. And the plan was that minor league guys would use bats and just kind of work their way up. And hopefully, that 1 or 2 guys was going to use bats at the big league level.
Right.
Maybe we need to do it a few more years, to actually see that pay off. But it never really did in those 5 years, and it was just a lot of money to outlay. So now we just focus on that amateur market, taking care of that, 13-year-old kid to that amateur, old timer. Old time, like 12 or even 10 to 70 plus is our target kind of age range. I would say the vast majority would be 10 to 25ish, 30ish as an age range, and we just focus on providing a custom bat is about 90% of the business that we would do to that amateur player, providing a great product, in my opinion, at a price point that's in Canadian dollars, not US dollars. That's even lower than a bat on a shelf in a store, and providing turnaround times that we're not waiting that even 4 weeks, right? I think right now our longest turnaround time is 10 business days, so 2 weeks plus some shipping time. And we're even trying to beat that during the season, because as a former player, I'm not ordering bats ahead of time. I'm always gonna wait till that last minute.
Right. You're gonna break your bat, then be like, damn it, I need a bat. Yeah.
You're not never anticipating, a bad day at the plate, right? Where you're gonna break, in the game. So I always have that in the back of my mind, saying we need to get bats turned around as quickly as possible and out to people. A Friday ship date, landing on their doorstep is perfect, because now they can use them for the weekend. So that's always in the forefront of our mind, treating those amateur players like pros.
Yeah.
And serving that clientele rather than a professional clientele to the best of our ability. And like I said, providing that product that's, I think, priced more than fair, great turnaround time, and just having that personalized service where you can get that customized bat specifically for you, and you don't have to be, making $9.5 million a year.
And you're doing it right here in Alberta, which is very cool.
Yeah, I think, having that local factor is,
it's a big
important.
deal, man. It's great.
Yeah, it's important that, I think there's two bat manufacturers in Quebec, one in Ontario, and then us out west. So there's 4 Canadian companies kind of fighting mostly for that Canadian business. We're the only ones out west. And I think we do, and I think the other 3 do have their MLB license, and I think we do is just as good a job, if not better, than they do. I mean, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Online must be a big aspect of your business, eh?
Yeah, we put a lot of time and energy into building a brand online and having a presence and making the user experience with our bat personalizer, as seamlessly as possible, and adding different options and different logo variations and even colors to it all the time. We've invested a lot of time and resource, money wise, making that just an really easy user experience, at least, in my opinion, trying to anyways, and hopefully creating an online experience that when the bat, when you unbox the bat, it's like exactly what you ordered online, as best as it can be, doing it on a computer. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I'm not going to lie here. I'm really impressed with Prairie Sticks. It's never easy to start and run your own business, but especially in an industry where I'm sure you had a lot of naysayers when you first kind of had the brainchild.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, my parents never actually said anything, coming out of college and them paying for, 4 or 5 years of university. They probably thought I was crazy. And I think my wife thought I was going to sit behind a desk for the balance of my career. And I'm not sure what in the world happened to me. I didn't think I had, an entrepreneurial bone in my body, but, here we are with a few gray hairs and, 2 decades almost into being self-employed. And, I'm not, there's been probably people that thought I've been crazy. No one's really said it to my face. I'm not naive either, right? I think, to be an entrepreneur, no matter if it's baseball bats in Central Alberta or even Alberta in general, you have to be a little bit crazy and being able to, deal with a little bit of risk or a lot of risk sometimes. And, but I think it's the thrill of, running a small business and making it successful and providing for, families and, things like that, like putting food in their mouths, and that's why I get up in the morning. It's a very interesting, unique experience. That's completely different than what I thought I was going to be doing, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's unique to say the least. I know on your website too, you have wood bat mugs that you've got like all the MLB teams and stuff on it. Yep. Are those just novelties, or are they actually safe for drinking out of? And
about 3 years ago, I started to make them in-house, and the process was such that it was just so cumbersome to actually drill out the mug. So what I did was there's a mug manufacturer out of the US that did not have any distributorship in Canada. So what I did with them is they actually use a manufacturer of these mugs in Canada. So it was an easy transition for us not to have to cross that border again with the manufacturer being here. So what we did was we became an official distributor of what are called dugout mugs.
Yeah.
And they own a Major League Baseball license to put logos on mugs. So
perfect.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer. We didn't have to, we have to pay Major League Baseball a portion of the cost of the mug for that license. But they had done all the groundwork for us. So basically we just get to piggyback off of their presence and distribute these mugs, which can be used for hot and cold beverages. They're 12-ounce mugs. It's a every major league team is available, all 30 teams. There's, you can put your own company logo or team logo on them. We do like groomsmen mugs for the groomsmen type gifts. I got a limited edition Expos mugs coming down the pipeline.
Awesome.
So hopefully, yeah. So just trying to do some, more Canadian focused things with the mugs that there just be very little interest on, the US side of things where they're just not, the US market's so big for them that I think they do like 6,000 of these mugs a week. They just don't have any time to put into the Canadian market. So we started talking early fall about doing this, alongside with them. And yeah, it's gone really good. I think for people looking to us for bats first, obviously, and then stumble upon the mugs. But it's gone good for us so far. There's obviously a lot of Blue Jays fans, buying up these mugs. But yeah, I think, having an Expo, there's like that underlying Expos fan out there. So, with a major league license, it allows us to, do a limited run of those, right? And see how that goes and provide some different options for, Canadian baseball fans. Because like you were saying earlier in the conversation, when the Jays went on a few of those playoff runs, like, the baseball interest you could feel it in the shop. Like there was more orders coming in for bats than there ever was for younger kids, and, parents kind of reliving the glory days from the early 90s, wanting to, get their kids involved in the game. And, even like this past year with the modified season, like the Blue Jays making the playoffs, it's a great thing for us. Yeah, it's great for baseball across the country. It's great for us. I think it's great for like sports stores selling gear and things like that. So, their success plays a massive role in, success of, businesses across the country. And, having, even going back to the mugs, like having novelty items like this, people are just looking to support their teams in any sort of way. And hopefully like the mugs are something completely different, that if someone gets one underneath the tree or just, for a thank you gift or a Father's Day or something like that, or even a Mother's Day, that it's just something totally different and totally unique to, to a baseball gift rather than, let's say a Blue Jays jersey.
No,
right?
for sure. It's very cool. And it's funny that you brought that up too, because I mean, it goes without saying that you would see an increase in stuff like Jays sales for your mugs and stuff like that. But even it's cool to see that like you even saw a boost in bat sales and stuff like that just like when the Jays are hot, baseball booms in this country.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. You see those weekends down in Seattle where, Canadians influx, like
they take over Safeco. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's just the more time I spend dealing with baseball people and baseball parents and baseball families, there's some massive baseball culture in this country that I think is overshadowed by baseball. But there are some awesome baseball people in this country that live and breathe it, and want to see the game grow and give their time and energy back to kids. It's really inspiring to see. As I've been fortunate enough to basically go from coast to coast, and it's no different in every province that you go to. You set up at tournaments, your booths, and there's people raking diamonds at 6 a.m. to get the fields ready for kids to play, right? Where you would never see that in a hockey rink, because in a hockey rink you just sit there and the rink attendant does the Zamboni.
He'll go Zamboni when he's good and ready.
You see an army of parents get out there to make sure their kids can play. It's something completely different culture-wise in the baseball community, that parents are just willing to and volunteers are willing to roll up their sleeves and make sure that their kids can play outside when the grass is green in an awesome summer day, because obviously we don't get too many of them in most parts of this country anyway. So
the love of baseball in this country, it runs deep, and people forget about it sometimes. Hockey overshadows.
Absolutely.
But honestly, Jared, thank you so much for joining us, man. Like, it means a lot, you taking the time to do that and to speak some bat manufacturing with us and so on and so forth. Before I let you go, did you have anything you wanted to plug for Prairie Sticks? Anything coming up here? Yeah,
so we are running some sales. So Black Friday just happened. The rest of this week we're running some in-stock bat sales as we get a little bit closer to Christmas. So we can, we're still pumping out some custom orders here for a few days to guarantee Christmas delivery, but stock bats, there's a few hundred in stock. So they'll arrive under the tree. And then after this week, we'll be, running some promos on some gift cards as those time frames for making stuff gets a little bit closer. So We can get some gift cards just done by email, and those are pretty much instantaneous. And then after the new year, we'll be cranking up, getting ready to send bats out to stores across the country, and hopefully with some of the restrictions lifted, tryouts will start to happen, and then we'll get into snow melting season and things like that. So yeah, you can find us. Probably the best way is www.prairiesticks.com. So that's our online home, and also we're on Instagram, and we like to post photos of kind of stuff that we're doing in the shop and different designs and colors and ideas and things like that, showing off some of the custom work that we're doing. So
awesome. Right on, man. Thanks again. Really appreciate this.
No, thanks. No, it's been a lot of fun talking baseball.